Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Chat Like a Native. You know how sometimes when you're speaking English, you just feel like you can't quite
Yeah.
get the words out smoothly?
Uh-huh.
And you end up with all these awkward pauses?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, in this deep dive, we're going to try to figure out some strategies to really help with that.
That's right. We're not talking about, speaking English super fast.
Right.
It's more about just being able to express yourself clearly
Yeah.
and, without having to stop and think all the time.
Without all the ums and ahs.
Exactly. And, one of the biggest things that I think can trip people up is this idea that they have to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Like every word has to be correct and the grammar has to be perfect.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get so focused on the grammar
Mhm.
that it actually makes it harder to speak.
Absolutely. And it's like, that fear of making a mistake can really kind of paralyze you.
Yeah, it's like that anxiety that comes up right when you're about to speak, and then you just kind of freeze up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, maybe we can start by looking at what are some of the things that people can do if they're feeling that anxiety? Because I think we've all been there
Oh, for sure.
where, you have something you want to say, but then you get nervous
Yeah.
and the words just won't come out.
Yeah, like what are some practical things that people can do if they feel that happening?
So one thing that can be really helpful is to practice in a safe environment.
Okay.
So, even just talking to yourself in English when you're alone,
Yeah.
or, maybe standing in front of a mirror and just kind of having a conversation with yourself.
Interesting.
It might sound a little strange,
Yeah.
but it can actually be really helpful just to get used to hearing yourself speak
Okay.
and, kind of get over that initial fear.
Yeah, I can see how just getting used to the sound of your own voice speaking English could make a difference.
And then another thing that can be really helpful is recording yourself. So, maybe you could read a short passage in English or just talk about your day for a minute and then listen back to the recording. And that way you can kind of analyze your speech without the pressure of having someone else listen to you.
Yeah, and you can really pay attention to where you're pausing.
Exactly.
And what words you might be using as filler words.
Yeah. Are you saying a lot or
Right.
And once you kind of identify those patterns, then you can start to work on reducing them.
So it's like self-awareness.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about just becoming more aware of your own speech patterns.
So becoming aware of your own speech patterns, and then also, finding that safe space to practice where you feel comfortable.
And, I think a lot of people don't realize how powerful things like breathing exercises can be.
Okay.
So if you're feeling really anxious before you have to speak English,
Yeah.
just take a few deep breaths. It sounds so simple, but it can really help to calm your nerves and just kind of center yourself.
Yeah, like how you might take a deep breath before giving a presentation or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really important to remember to be kind to yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And set realistic goals.
Yeah.
Don't expect to be perfectly fluent overnight.
Right.
It takes time and practice.
So maybe just trying to speak for a minute without pausing and then slowly increase the time.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've created that safe space. We've gotten comfortable. We're breathing, we're relaxed.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of the things that we can do to actually speak more quickly and smoothly?
So there are a bunch of different techniques that people can use.
Okay.
One that's really popular is called shadowing.
Shadowing.
And have you ever heard of that?
I think I've heard of it, but I'm not exactly sure what it is.
So basically, it's like this. You listen to a native English speaker.
Okay.
And you try to imitate their speech as closely as possible.
So it's like you're their shadow.
Yeah, exactly like your voice is following their voice.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And it's not just about the words themselves. It's also about the pronunciation.
Right.
The rhythm. The intonation.
Like the music of the language.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, you might choose a short audio clip from a podcast or a news report. And you just listen to it a few times to get a feel for it.
Okay.
And then you play it again and you try to speak along with the recording.
Oh, wow. So you're speaking at the same time as the recording.
Yeah. And you're really trying to match their speed and the way they stress different words.
Wow. Okay.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
But it's really effective.
So you're basically training your ear and your mouth to work together.
Yeah, exactly.
To kind of absorb those natural patterns of English.
And I think another thing that's really helpful is to pay attention to the intonation.
Okay.
Because that can really change the meaning of what you're saying.
Right. Like if you're asking a question or if you're making a statement.
Exactly. So shadowing is a great way to practice all of those things.
Okay. So shadowing sounds really cool. What are some other things that we could try?
So another set of techniques that can be really helpful are what we call speed drills.
Speed drills.
Yeah, and I know the name might sound a little intimidating.
Yeah.
But it's not about like speaking as fast as you possibly can.
Nope.
It's more about just pushing yourself to speak at a slightly faster pace than you're normally comfortable with.
So it's like a workout for your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. And, one really simple speed drill that you can do is just to set a timer.
Okay.
Maybe for like 30 seconds to start.
Okay.
And then just talk continuously about any topic that comes to mind.
Oh, so it doesn't even matter what you're talking about.
Oh, not really.
Oh, yeah.
The point is just to keep the words flowing
Yeah.
and not to worry too much about making mistakes.
So just keep talking.
Yeah, and you might be surprised at how much easier it becomes to speak.
Right.
Once you kind of get over that initial fear of making a mistake.
So it's like building that momentum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another really good speed drill is reading aloud.
Okay.
So you could choose like a short paragraph from a book or an article and just try to read it as quickly as you can without stumbling.
And as you get better, you can make the text harder.
Exactly. And then, of course, there are always the classic tongue twisters.
Oh, yeah. Those are fun.
Yeah, like, she sells seashells by the seashore.
Right.
They're really good for improving your pronunciation.
Yeah, because they make you move your mouth in all sorts of weird ways.
Yeah, and they force you to be really precise.
So they're good for clarity as well as speed.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've got shadowing, we've got speed drills. What else?
So another really valuable tool is recording yourself and listening back.
Okay, we talked about that a little bit before, but how can that help us with speed and fluency?
So, when you listen back to a recording of yourself speaking, you can really pinpoint those moments where you're pausing unnecessarily or using filler words.
Yeah. You might not even realize you're doing it until you hear it.
Exactly. And once you know where those pauses are happening, then you can start to practice those specific phrases or transitions.
It's like you're becoming your own speech coach.
Yeah, exactly. You're identifying the areas that need work.
Right. And then you can focus on them.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's recording yourself.
Yeah.
What else?
So the last technique that I want to talk about is called chunking.
Chunking?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think so.
So basically, it's all about breaking down your thoughts into smaller units of information.
Okay.
So instead of trying to translate everything word for word from your native language.
Right, which I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, a lot of people do that, and it can really slow you down.
I think your brain is trying to do too many things at once.
Exactly. So instead of doing that, try to think in phrases.
Okay.
So think about the main idea that you want to express.
Okay.
And then break it down into 2 or 3 smaller chunks. And then practice saying each of those chunks separately.
So it's like taking a big bite of food and cutting it into smaller pieces.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it much easier to digest.
Right.
And once you can say each chunk smoothly, then you can start to put them together.
And that makes the whole sentence smoother.
Exactly.
Okay, so chunking. I like that.
Yeah, it's a really helpful technique.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about speaking, but you mentioned earlier that listening is also really important.
Oh, absolutely.
So how does being a good listener help with fluency?
Well, when you listen to native English speakers, you're kind of subconsciously absorbing all of these patterns of speech.
Right.
Like the rhythm, the intonation, the way that they connect their ideas.
So it's like you're training your ear to hear those natural patterns.
Exactly. And the more you listen.
Yeah.
The more natural those patterns will start to sound to you.
And then when you speak, it'll be easier to produce those patterns yourself.
Exactly. So, I would really encourage people to listen to as much authentic English content as possible.
Like what kind of things?
So like podcasts, movies, TV shows, audiobooks, things like that.
Okay, so things that native speakers actually listen to.
Yeah, and you can also try to find speakers that you really enjoy listening to and kind of pay attention to their style.
Like their pacing and their intonation. And...
Yeah, exactly. And, you can even try to imitate them a little bit.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, just kind of practice speaking in the same way that they do.
Okay, so listen to a lot of English and try to imitate the speakers that you like.
Yeah, and, there are also a lot of great interactive listening exercises that you can do.
Oh, like what?
So there are lots of language learning apps that have exercises where you have to listen to a short clip.
Oh, okay.
And then answer questions about it.
Right.
Or repeat what you heard.
So it's like active listening.
Yeah, exactly. And, you can also participate in online discussions or language exchanges.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, where you have to listen to other people and then respond to them. So those are all great ways to kind of practice your listening skills in a real-world context.
So it's not just about, like, passively listening to music or something.
No, it's about really engaging with the language.
Right, actively listening.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different techniques for improving fluency.
Yeah.
But how do we actually make sure that we're practicing consistently?
So I think one of the most important things is to create a routine.
Okay.
So, maybe you set aside 15 minutes every day to practice your speaking.
Right.
Or maybe you do it 3 times a week for 30 minutes.
So find a schedule that works for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time.
Right.
Even just a little bit of practice every day can make a big difference.
Yeah. I think consistency is key with anything that you're trying to learn.
Absolutely. And, another thing that can be really helpful is to track your progress.
Oh, okay.
So you could keep a journal or a log and just write down what you practiced each day and how you felt about it.
And that way you can see how far you've come.
Exactly. And, it can be really motivating to look back and see how much you've improved.
Yeah, it's like a little pat on the back.
Yeah. And it can also help you to identify any areas where you might still need to focus your efforts.
Right.
So, maybe you notice that you're still pausing a lot when you're trying to use a particular grammar structure.
Yeah.
Then you can kind of make a note of that.
And then work on it specifically.
Exactly.
Okay, so create a routine.
Yeah.
Track your progress. That all makes sense.
Yeah.
But, sometimes it's hard to stay motivated when you're learning something new.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Especially when it's challenging.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things is to remember why you're doing it.
Okay.
What are your goals for learning English?
Right.
And how will being able to speak more fluently help you to achieve those goals?
So like if you want to travel or if you want to get a new job or
exactly,
or just connect with more people.
Yeah. And, I think it's also important to celebrate your successes.
Oh, yeah.
Even the small ones.
Right.
So if you manage to speak for a whole minute without pausing, that's something to be proud of.
Definitely.
So, don't be afraid to give yourself a little pat on the back.
So be patient. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Celebrate those small successes.
And, I think another thing that can be really helpful is to find a language partner.
Okay.
Or a study group.
Right.
Because it's always more fun to learn with other people.
Yeah. And you can kind of keep each other accountable.
Exactly. And, you can also get feedback from each other.
Right.
And learn from each other's mistakes.
So find a community of people who are learning English.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a lot of great advice.
Yeah.
But, even with all the best intentions, sometimes we just make mistakes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So what are some common pitfalls that we should try to avoid?
So I think one of the biggest ones is overthinking.
Okay.
When you're trying to speak and you're so worried about making a mistake.
Right.
That you end up just freezing up. Yeah.
So it's really important to just try to relax and let the words flow.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Exactly. Mistakes are part of the learning process.
Yeah.
And, I think another common pitfall is not practicing consistently.
Right.
So, life gets busy and it's easy to let things slide.
Yeah.
But if you really want to improve your fluency, you need to make practice a priority.
So maybe set a reminder on your phone or put it in your calendar.
Exactly. And, another thing that can be helpful is to find a way to make practice fun.
Okay.
So, if you're not enjoying it, you're less likely to stick with it.
Right. So maybe find some activities that you actually like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, maybe you could watch a movie in English.
Okay.
Or listen to some music.
Or join a conversation group.
Yeah, exactly. There are lots of different ways to make practice enjoyable.
So be patient, be consistent, make it fun.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different techniques and strategies for speaking English more fluently.
But are there any other kind of bonus tips that you could give us?
So I think one of the best things that you can do is to just immerse yourself in the language as much as possible.
Right.
So, surround yourself with English,
right.
Watch English TV shows, listen to English music, read English books.
So make it a part of your daily life.
Exactly. And, I think another thing that can be really helpful is to try to think in English.
Okay.
So, instead of translating everything in your head,
right.
Just try to think directly in English.
So it becomes more natural.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think another thing that can be really helpful is to visualize yourself speaking English fluently.
Oh, okay.
So, just close your eyes and imagine yourself having a conversation in English.
Right.
And imagine yourself feeling confident and relaxed.
So it's like a mental rehearsal.
Exactly. And the more you do that,
yeah.
the easier it will become to actually speak English fluently in real life.
So it's like you're training your brain.
Yeah, exactly.
To believe that you can do it. Well, that's all really great advice.
Yeah.
I think we've covered a lot of really helpful tips and techniques
I think so, too.
for speaking English more fluently.
Yeah.
And, the most important thing is to just keep practicing.
Exactly.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah, and remember to have fun.
Right, because if you're not enjoying it, you're less likely to stick with it.
Exactly.
So here's something to think about. How can you use these techniques to really capture the natural rhythm and intonation of English? Think about how native speakers actually talk and try to imitate them.
That's a great challenge.
It's not just about the words themselves, it's about the music of the language.
Yeah, I love that.
So thanks for joining us on Chat Like a Native, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.